Okay, I'm finally making another video. Shout out to my friend Cindy, who said she shared my videos with 300 friends in her church and encouraged me to continue. And that was really a confirmation because when I was walking on the beach today, I felt like God said, hey, start making some more videos. But I had become weary. And that's going to be the subject of today's video. And I like to keep the videos short because I have gotten too crazy about YouTube. And when the videos are like 20, 40 minutes long, I think it's too long. So I'm going to try to keep this short. But I wanted to talk about weariness. Why? Because I have been weary. What are we weary about? Bad news Orama. I mean, there's a song out that says this last year and a half now seems like, 6 winters straight, right? I mean, this is just one bad thing after another. Then we got the COVID, looks like it's under control. Then the Delta shows up. Um, all the debating about the schools, the masks, seems like a lot of turmoil, hate, and then we've got somebody in the White House, and I don't call him president, who seems to be making some really bad and dangerous decision, putting people in harm's way, and people got killed. I mean, the 12 Marines in Afghanistan and people left behind, American citizens left behind. I lived in China for 3 years, came back last year. If something happened and I was abandoned there, boy, would I feel like my country had betrayed me. And that was what I always felt safe being in China, because I was like, well, my country will come get me out. Now, Trump was the president then, and you know what? He would have come and got me out. But this person who's in the White House, who is not the legitimate person to be in the White House, he is making decisions that are poor and lack wisdom and are getting people killed and hurt. And let's not even talk about, bringing Afghanistan's probably non-vetted into our country. My guess is they probably brought terrorists in, and I probably shouldn't say that, but that is how I feel. And so, let's say they did. I'm growing weary of getting bad news. I'm growing weary of all these lockdowns, all these restrictions, a loss of freedom. And so I wanted to make a little bit of an encouragement to try to look at those of us who are Christians and have been Christians a long time, and we grew up on the Bible, and we read the stories in the Bible. I think we need to look back to those times in the Bible and realize that this is nothing new between difficult times coming and needing to persevere through them. And also to realize we are not powerless during this time of waiting. We are not powerless during this time of weariness. We are weary, and I'm totally guilty of it. I think many of us are like me. There's personal situations. My dad has been hospitalized and then put into rehab. Shocking to me, shocking to my family. That's made me sad. That's made me tired. And many of you have lost loved ones, and that's made you sad and tired and weary of the whole struggle. And then when we find that these officials who've done nefarious things and seemingly don't seem to care very much about it, this is wearying. And we look up to the sky and we say, God, what is going on? Why won't you do something? But then we're Christians. What have we been taught to do? It said Paul was writing to us in the New Testament, and it said, consider it all joy when you encounter various suffering, because suffering brings perseverance. And perseverance has hopefully great reward in it, with building our faith in Christ and building our perseverance to go on. I can talk to so many times in the Bible when things looked not so good for things. And one of the stories, if you don't know this one, you haven't been going to Sunday school, but if you it's David and Goliath. How many people love the story about David and Goliath? They're like, wow, this is such a cool story. Well, maybe this is our David and Goliath time. The odds look stacked against us. It looks like people are taunting us in our government and around the world. It seems like things are falling apart. This was the time of David and Goliath, because Goliath, the Philistine army, was right up against the Israeli army, and they were mocking them all the time. They were saying, we've got this big giant, come out and fight us. And the army was afraid. And they were kind of falling apart, and they lacked leadership. Let me ask you a question. When you, as a child or an adult, or whenever, if even this is your first time hearing this story, David was a youth. He wasn't even in the army, but he wasn't in the Israeli army, I should say, the physical army. But you know what army he was already in? He was in the army of God. Because in his lonely times, and probably boring times, he was out as a shepherd watching his father's sheep. Who does that remind you of? Precursor to Jesus. Okay. When he was out there, he fought the lion, and he fought the bear, and he fought them just with a sling and his stones, and he killed them. These are very powerful animals known to kill man, and yet he was able to overcome them. But how did David say he overcame? My God, my Lord, gave me the ability to overcome the lion and the bear. So when he came up to the army that was supposed to be a strong army, that was supposed to have the right equipment, the right tactics, that was the best and supposed to be able to fight the Philistines, they were cowering. And David heard these people, and he said, who is this Philistine who comes against this uncircumcised Philistine? He took a physical presence and he turned it into a spiritual situation. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine, non-believer in the God Jehovah, the creator of the universe, who has all power and all might? Who is he to come against the army of the Lord? And he was actually, so you think that would have rallied the army and they all would have been like, rah, rah, you're right, David, let's get out there and fight. No. David kind of stood alone. Even his brother made fun of him and said, who are you? You're some little kid here. You just came and brought us lunch. Go back to your lonely sheep on the hillside. No. David was in the army of the Lord, and he had a purpose that had already been put in his mind. And the army and the king were weary. They'd been taunted a long time, and they really didn't know what to do. But David was sent by God, and he knew what to do. He said, you come at me with your armor, your sword, but I come at you in the name of the Lord. And we all know the end of the story. This young teenager took down this big Philistine giant, chopped his head off with his own sword, the sword of the Philistine, and held it up, and then the Philistines took rout. Are you weary? Well, let's look back at David and Goliath's story. When you heard that story, we all love that story. But did you think that would be relevant in your life? Did you think your giant in your life was going to come up and look like this big guy in a loincloth and sword? No, that's not what we're fighting. We're fighting, it says we battle not with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities. My dear friends, my Christian brothers and sisters, we are not battling people. We are battling powers and principalities. We have a weapon, just like David, and we must not grow weary. What is our weapon? Prayer. Prayer. We have to pray. It's not even easy. And just be honest, how many times a day are you praying for our nation? For our nation to get out of this situation where things are falling apart. Our leadership is unrighteous leadership. They are not following the Lord's command. They don't hear God. But those of us who do hear God, who have a relationship and have a history of fighting battles, we have a history of fighting battles with God, we need to step up and pray. We need to be praying. We need to pray at least 15 minutes a day. Spend time praying that God will intervene, that God will take charge of this country again, that God will bring righteous leaders, that God will save us from these taunting powers and principalities who have no good in store for our country. So, I'm weary, you're weary, but let's keep going. Let's keep praying. Let's take up the battle in the way that we can, right where we are. Let's not be side watchers. Let's not be the Israeli army lying down, not knowing what to do. Let's come together and pray. Pray on your own. Pray with your, at your churches. Pray, because God said, pray for this city, that it should prosper, that you would prosper too. That was when the Israelis were taken into captivity by the Babylonians, foreign country, evil people. But God said, I will prosper you, even amongst these evil people. But you need to pray for the success of the city, and as it prospers, so will you. Pray, not for the prosperity or that unrighteous government would prosper, but that God would raise up righteous leaders and righteous acts and give wisdom and remove those who are unrighteous, and get rid of unrighteous laws, executive orders that have no right and no business in the land of the free. Thanks for listening. If you like what I'm saying, please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. These will be coming out a lot more often. Thanks, Cindy, for the encouragement. See you next time.